NBS Frontline.
The Chitezi landfill, one of the largest waste disposal sites in the country, finds itself at the center of a catastrophe, with the death toll rising to 34 and many still missing. The pressing question is, who dropped the ball? Many are now homeless, seeking refuge under tents provided by the Red Cross. Meanwhile, KCCA remains uncertain about the next steps as other areas of the metropolis reject the capital city's west.
The councillors of Chira municipality, for example, are also up in arms. But I've had talks with the mayor. They are going to have a meeting. I am also going to engage them.
Could this disaster, years in the making, have been averted if only there had been the political will? Elsewhere, it has been months now since a section of MPs started mobilizing to censure Parliament's commissioners over the self-awarded service contract. Yet after they had finally rallied the troops and collected the requisite signatures to introduce their censure motion, High threw a spanner in their works.
Once the notice is issued, prepare.
10 days elapse if the Speaker does not put our motion on the order paper. This Parliament must be dissolved by the President.
Is this a victory for the embattled commissioners, or does it seal their political careers? And what lies ahead for those who push the motion to be tabled? Does the court's ruling alter the dynamics of the August House, or are the battle lines drawn even more starkly? This is the Frontline.
NBS Frontline.
Good evening and welcome to this edition of the Frontline on NBS TV. My name is Charles Mwangushampagi. And tonight we start with two bad stories, if I could say. One is the Chitezi disaster that happened on Saturday last week. So far, 34 bodies have been recovered. Many believe a lot more might still be buried under that landfill. I've been told horrific stories about those being pulled out because of the heat that's generated by the garbage, the damage it's done to those bodies that are being pulled out. Just this morning, people were at Mulago from eastern Uganda, from Mr. Fonopondo from your area. They pulled out some 4 bodies from your area. In Tororo.
Tororo where? Tororo where?
No, Tororo, we'll find the details. But
no, better be specific, then I would know.
No.
But when you say...
Maybe they didn't reach out to you. I'm saying yes. The scale of this accident will have implications across the country because it was a collection site, not just for garbage, but also for people from across the country that were working there. And from what we're hearing so far is that the area being searched for bodies is only where houses were buried. But there are people who were literally living around that landfill, working there, garbage aggregators and other people who were there that early, those who collect plastic and other usable material, I mean reusable materials that they were picking out of there. We could be looking at a much, much bigger disaster, but the bigger question is, over the last few days, a lot of revelations that this was an accident that officials at the Kampala Capital City Authority were aware was coming. Sufficient warning had been given. One of them as recent as less than a month ago, before it happened. Why didn't the authorities take action? What did they do? Why are people still, almost moving on as if life is as usual? We'll have some comments from the panel here. We'll also be discussing, where does the decision of the court leave the Sechikubo petition to censure 4 commissioners of parliament? Court says the service award given to the commissioners, the 4 commissioners of parliament, backbench commissioners, including the former leader of opposition, was legal. But morally, the lawyers call that the judge went into what they call obiter dictum to discuss outside of the law. It says the law says this, but this is what I think. So the morality and the legality of that service award, we'll be discussing that, especially from the perspective of where it leaves the motion to censure the 4 backbench commissioners. On the panel tonight, and of course, just before I introduce the panel, we lost one of our own, a key figure on NBS and Next Media platforms before, a key figure in national commentary, a former presidential press secretary, Joseph Tamale Mirundi, who passed away earlier in the week. We'll pay some tribute to him as we move on. Let me introduce, from the extreme end, from Luemiyaga County in Sembabule District, the Honorable Theodore Sechkubo. Very nice to have you, sir.
Thank you for inviting me tonight, and good evening, dear viewers.
I have next to Honorable Sechkubo, I have the Honorable Dr. Abed Bwanika. Doctor, very nice to have you.
Thank you, and good evening, viewers.
Chimanya, yeah, the constituency is called Chimanya Kabonera in Masaka District. And from
Masaka City.
Masaka City,
Yeah.
from the National Unity Platform. From Mulanda, Kapele Byong, the Uganda Media Center, and a member of the Frontline, Ofono Opondo. Very nice to have you.
Thank you, Charles. Good evening to our viewers. Glad to meet Dr. Bed and what has been going through lately. And obviously, my brother Theo, Theo and his petition, I was asking him, I don't see his prof, I don't see his other threesome from the former NRM supporting him. What happened?
What happened? We'll wait and see. From Entebbe municipality, Entebbe is supposed to become a city now, isn't it?
It is next year.
Next year. The mayor of Entebbe, Brad Fabrice Rulinda. Very nice to have you, sir.
Thank you for having me, and good evening to all the viewers.
And from Kira municipality, Shadow Minister for Finance, FDC Katonga faction, a member of the Frontline, Ibrahim Semujunganda. Very nice to have you, sir.
Pondo is also from a faction. Thank you.
I introduced Ofono, I'm introducing you now.
There's only one NRM. There's no faction in NRM.
I thought Go Forward was a faction within the NRM, but I don't know what happened.
No. Go Forward people left NRM, they said so, unless they have come back.
Gentlemen, I'm going to be a little bit biased here. Let me start with Ofono Opondo, and then I'll come to the Honorable Ibrahim Semujunganda. A word or comment on the passing of Joseph Tamale Mirundi. I think very few Ugandans have passed and have had so much content they left behind that is playing out, including Edam Elia Joseph Tamale Mirundi. I have seen so many versions of his will on what should happen. Today, State House was saying, yes, Tamale Mirundi refused to step in the office that the president appointed him to as a presidential advisor on media and press. But as State House, we still think we should honor him and take charge of his burial, though he had willed and said he doesn't want to see anything about his former employer near his body. Ofono Opondo.
Well, the will is good, but the living decide for the dead. Tamale Mirundi, as we knew him, his brother just told me that he was actually called Blasio. That's how he was baptized. But along the way, he rejected it in preference for Joseph in the Bible. Those of you Christians who have read know the story of Joseph, that he wanted that name. Tamale Mirundi is, or was, that person that I think many of us who come from humble background passed through. From Chotera in those difficult days of the late Idi Amin, Ali Obote. At 16, he came to Kampala and found a job as a sweeper in a news organization, Muno newspaper, which was run by the Catholic Church at the time. As was the practice in those days, there were no trained journalists, so you grow through the ranks. Eventually became a newspaper vendor, seller, as we call them these days on the street. And along the way, he began picking the ABC of journalism. To rise to the level he rose of being a presidential press secretary. I think it is no mean achievement. When I joined journalism in 1991, I found Tamale was already a reporter. We both went into the interim parliament then in NRC, where we stayed until 1996. Then we went into CA. Like the journalist of that time, he was of a humble background. Along the way, because of his character, Tamale managed to gain education, professional education, which came in a strange way. In 1994, at the height of the LRA, a war in northern Uganda, President Museveni addressed a press conference at which I was with Tamale. And the president said that by December of that year, he would have finished the LRA. And Tamale challenged him, said, you will not have finished LRA. And they put a bet with the president and Tamale, 2 million, 2 million. December came and LRA and Joseph Kony were still there. And Tamale Mirundi reminded the president through Hope Kivenjere, then press secretary, who is now dead, and the president conceded. And Tamale won his bet. Around that time, Makerere University was also opening private sponsorship for journalism students. And Tamale applied. And instead of the president giving him the 2 million bet he had won, the president offered that the State House will pay for him tuition. And as they say, he never looked back. Around that time also, 1994, the newspaper for which Tamale was working, Muno, like most of the vernacular papers, Ngabo, Star, Monansi, and so on, folded. And Tamale got stuck, couldn't find a job. We were going into the referendum of 1995. And Tamale got recruited by Mr. Moses Biarohanga into the NRM wing of the campaign, which then also moved into the campaign of 1996 presidential campaigns between President Yoweri Museveni and Paul Kawanga Semogere. Having come from the Catholic background and Muno, he had been opposed to the NRM, he had been opposed, he was a huge critic of President Museveni. But because of these gestures, he changed. And he joined us for the referendum, he joined us for the elect Museveni task force, he joined us for the elect Museveni in 2001. And that's how he eventually found his way into State House. I must say, Tamale has been one of the most informed, well-read, the history of Uganda, the nitty-gritty. And you would disagree with him the way he put the things, but you would find it very difficult to fault him on the facts. And he was gifted. He was gifted in speaking on radio, speaking on TV, writing, and also mass communication, speaking to a crowd, which is very rare. Many of us can write, may not speak. I think among the people, my brother Semujo is also gifted in a similar way. Well-read, I think Sembujo reads extensively. I'm not saying you're about to die. I am simply saying that you have similar attributes as Mr. Tamari Mirundi. The only difference is that you came straight from home, primary school, into university. You haven't gone through the tour of duty as Tamari.
He was a planned kid, you're suggesting, eh?
Yeah, he was a planned kid of sorts. So you could fault Tamari on how he puts things, but on the facts, it was good.
Okay.
And I think it's a very good example of someone, people not giving up. You can start from a humble background and really make it. He was also courageous.
Thank you. A quick comment from you and then the rest of the panel, and then we'll move on to the other issues.
We graduated the same year with Tamara Mirun. We in Mackay 95, 98. Our graduation was January 1999. At that time, we had 2 mass communication classes, evening and day. He was an evening student. The interesting thing about him coming to Makerere is that he had fought the Press and Media Statute?
Mm-hmm.
Of Press and Journal Statute of 95, which was setting a degree as a qualification for anyone to be a journalist in Uganda, or a degree and a diploma in any other, a degree in
any other field and a diploma,
and then a diploma in journalism. Because of his background that Mr. Ofano Opondo has enumerated, he led other journalists to fight that law. It was not necessary for journalists to have a degree or to have a degree and then a diploma in journalism. And I think he was very popular. Every journalism seminar I attended, and Tamale was one of the speakers, he didn't like Monda because he said Obo, Wafura, and the team at Monda were the ones who facilitated the enactment of that law in order to lock out other people who didn't have degrees. I was with him at CBS. We had a talk show there for more than 5 years. I was with him at Radio Star for almost the same number of years. He had the advantage of having been in the media for quite some time. So he had a hands-on knowledge of many things that had happened in Uganda, extremely courageous, but also contradictory. He would thank Museveni for educating his children in the best universities in the world, and then he will say he doesn't want his employers to come close to his body when he's dead because of the mistreatment he went through. Like many appointments that the president makes, Tamale was not a traditional spokesperson that you can appoint to speak for anything. Because even for himself, in the morning he would have one position, at lunchtime another, in the evening, and then the following day. I remember when he became the press secretary for the president, he made comments that enlisted a protest from Kenya because he continued behaving like someone who had no boundaries. And then Kenya treated his comment, a comment coming from a presidential press secretary, as if it was coming from the president. So the people he didn't like included Kabushenga, Audrey Kruawog,
Andrew Mwenda.
He
had quite a long list.
No, but those particular one, I'm mentioning them because my interaction with, not with him, but with the friends, was that when he was messing up, there are some of the people who sat and advised the president that, please, you cannot have Tamale Mirunda as a press secretary. And for that, he will never forgive them.
He never forgave them.
He didn't forgive
He never forgave them. He had no opportunity to forgive them.
But I think sometimes the president makes appointment because you see, Tamale was of a value. But you give him something he cannot do, and then you want to hold him to some standards because he was very difficult, not a person that you are going to state and then hold him on some standards. But as O said, he was a very good communicator. He had stories of all types. Because from Radio Star at that time, we were all poor journalists working. After the show, we would walk to look for taxis. But when you are with Tamale, you cannot get tired. Then one time I remember, and this will be the last thing I will say about him. After the 2000 elections, he lost in Chotera. There were about 4 candidates. They all got 4,000 something. So when he lost, he came back, he was a bit angry. So that's how, so he was very aggressive towards the government. I have lost the point I wanted to make. So eventually we were with him on CBS, then Radio Star, then, because at that time he was also looking for bearing, what do I do, then he attacks Buganda Today, then he goes on their radio, then he attacks the Catholic Church, then tomorrow he says, I am a Christian. I don't even know how they are, because I've heard their masses for Tamale. I don't know.
We need to run through this so that we can go into the main show. A quick comment from Honorable Theodore Sechikubo. He got quite under the skins of many people and quite hard. The late Tamale Mirundi.
Sure, the late, we all commiserate with the family and State House who remained his employer. Though not an easy one. But I think his credit have come from a humble beginning to where he reached. And along the way, you can be sure he made friends and foes, and some who were not willing to let the past, and those who took him on. But he was equally aggressive.
Thank you.
Yes, we miss him, the country shall miss him, and my condolences to the family.
Dr. Bwanika, a quick one, and then Mayor Fabrice.
My sympathies to the family, and especially to his son, Tamale Mirundi, whom we work with in the parliament. He's one of our best employees in the parliament.
Yeah, in the legal department.
Yes, in the legal department. Tamale was self-made, and he believed in himself. Sometimes there are many instances when I disagreed with him in terms of content, but he believed in himself, and even when he was, whatever he was saying was they were not facts, he could make them look as if those are facts, and that was his nature, and we are going to miss him.
Mayor.
Quick one. Didn't have any personal interaction with him. But hate him, like him, he was hilarious. He made any number of issues funny. And like you said, I don't think there's any Ugandan who has produced as much content that will outlive them like he has. He has left so many things. I mean, he came up with so many things about using your head. So every time someone hits on their head, you know what it means. Whether, as long as you're Ugandan, you know what that means. So I think we shall miss him, at least his humor, which for him was seriousness, but to the rest it was humor. So my sincere condolences to the family and the people who were his friends and the people who knew him. But
Thank
yes,
you.
the fraternity has lost something.
Thank you. My interaction with Tamale Mirundi, I was doing an assignment for the BBC, so I interviewed him. I actually called him into the BBC studios here in Kampala. So I interviewed him, and after interviewing him, we had a chat about him coming on one of my shows. The interview with the BBC was in English, of course, but when I told him about coming to my show, he said, if you're Zungu, me, I don't want to come. And he said he wouldn't come to my show. And our condolences to the family of Tamale Mirundi, and like Dr. Bedwanika said, to Joseph Tamale Mirundi, a guy I have met, an amazing lawyer that I've met who works at Parliament, Legal Department, and the rest of the family. Let's move on to Chitezi, and we'll spend a few minutes discussing Chitezi. And the bigger question for me, and I want to put, one is there were protests against KCCA taking the garbage that we still generate in Kampala to other dump fields or landfills. There are protests in Dundu, in Mukono. They're saying don't bring your garbage here. Both on social media, locally there. There was a protest in Katabi yesterday, which was joined by the mayor, who is here with us, to say, why are you saying we're in Kampala Metropolitan? Where do you want KCCA to put the garbage that we generate? What different plans do you have in Entebbe to deal with the mountain of garbage that we create? And the other, I want to put all my questions so that you just respond to them as we move on to the other issue. Chitezi was not an accident. Chitezi was seen coming. I've read a report written last month saying, please come and see where the cracks are, where the potential danger is, where it might end, that it will kill people. That minute from a communication and minutes of a meeting of the Kampala Capital City Authority executives, the political and the technical wing. And we had the explanations. The death toll now is standing at 34 recovered bodies. There's fear that more bodies are still under that rubble. Let me start with you, the mayor. Your own experiences, I don't know if you're having discussions with your colleagues within the Kampala metropolitan area on this disaster. You have said they can't bring the garbage to Katabi?
Yes,
Katabi, which is a site owned by KCCA.
No.
A land owned, there's a contestation of...
No.
Yes,
that's land owned by Entebbe municipality. It just happens to be in Nkumba, which is in the town council of Katabi.
Okay.
No, we have not said they cannot bring garbage to Entebbe. That's not, it's a misrepresentation of what we said. And two, I saw an interview done by the Lord Mayor on one of the TVs that he has been looking for us and not finding us, or me particularly, which is also a very misleading and very dishonest response. He has not called me. But what happened is I did meet with the KCCA officials today. I met with the Deputy ED, David Luyimbazi, and the Director of Solid Waste Management. What we are saying in Entebbe is simple. We are saying you cannot solve one disaster by creating another. Entebbe municipality's dumping site is already a very small one. It is a tiny piece of land that is right next to a water body, which already, as Entebbe municipality, we've been looking for options and alternatives to this to make sure that we do not have or create an environmental issue and community issue. So we asked that if KCCA wants to bring garbage to our site, there should be a comprehensive plan, one, on how it will be managed, two, on a long-term solution for that dumping site. Entebbe is handling about 50 to 100 metric tons of garbage a day. Kampala Capital City Authority is producing, as of their statistics of 2021, they produced 2,500 metric tons. 2,500 metric tons a day. That is on the statistics. So from the conversation we had today, let's even go modest and say they produce 60% of that. 60% of that, even if you brought me at just 1,000 metric tons of garbage to Entebbe, we are struggling as it is to manage 50 to 100 or 150 metric tons. How will we handle 1,500 or 1,000 metric tons a day? That landfill will be filled in a matter of days, and then we would have the same problem because this is right next to, if you've been there or if you've seen the images, this is right next to a water body, which as Entebbe municipality, I believe, we should be finding alternatives. We shouldn't actually be right next to a water body. We are creating a hazard. We are creating a problem that in the long term may affect the community. So as we find a solution, we cannot add.
What solutions are you thinking?
One,
you've seen an
we could put a sorting plant, and we have been in discussions with investors to see who can come and put a sorting and a processing plant where we could do either waste to energy, or we could do waste to these plastics. We recycle them, where we could do briquettes. So we've been trying to have a discussion on how we handle this. The problem is, in Uganda, everything we do, we are reactionary. It is sad what happened in Chitezi, but we don't solve it by creating another problem elsewhere.
Okay.
We solve it by finding a solution. We have not said KCCA cannot come, but we're saying as you come with a plan. Let's see your plan, because right there where we are, it's even in a flight path. If you increase the garbage capacity, that means you increase the birds that will be in that place. Those birds affect the air traffic. As you look at the environmental issues, you look at the community that lives around there. Already we have been struggling with the way things are. Today we are seeing about 40, 50 trucks lined up, all to dump. Now, if those do that the whole day, even the community will get affected. So we said, let's have a plan, let's have a clear direction. And on the matter of Katabi and KCCA, Katabi had no jurisdiction or mandate to have an MOU on behalf of Entebbe municipality on its property. And that's what we talked about. What they agreed with Katabi shouldn't have been agreed, because that's not their property, that's not their, it just happens to be located in the neighborhoods of Katabi.
Okay. Yeah. Honorable Semujunganda, we're generating all this garbage. We've seen Chitezi grow to where it has reached and the disaster that it has caused. There are many questions being asked. One, where you have a technical leadership and a political leadership that don't agree, at least politically, you have 2 ministers for KCCA appointed by the president, subscribing to the NRM. You have elected officials who are opposition, and you can see that from the disaster that we have seen, the communication between these two was not almost there. The Prime Minister, Right Honorable Robin Anabanja, was on Barometer here, and she said, Elias Lukwago knows me, has never reached out to me, knows my address. Has never reached out
what?
To discuss issues of Kampala. I mean, the other one is the Prime Minister, is the Lord Mayor. There should be a point at which you move above politics to discuss issues that affect the ordinary person. Shouldn't there?
In the 9th Parliament, I was representing Chadondo East, and Chitezi was one of the villages. The complaint about and against Chitezi are all. At that time, the trouble I had as an MP, people who are sorting Kasasiro, who work there, and they are also in their hundreds. They never wanted anyone to raise an alarm about Chitezi, because you would cost them their source of livelihood. But the neighbors were complaining. So I had a meeting in Rusanja with the neighbors, then I went to Chitezi. Same problem I had with the people who were making cigarettes from Chireka. People who were employed by the company want the company to continue. The neighbors want the company to leave. But the World Bank, as early as that time, and talking about 2011, 2016, the World Bank advised that that dump site, I didn't know the classification, land site, landfill, dump site, but they said you can no longer continue dumping waste there. First of all, like many of the areas in Kampala, at the time they started dumping garbage there around 1996, later 2000, it is upgraded with a facility from Bank of Uganda. The settlements were not as heavy as they are today. Many of the people who have settled around Chitezi have settled, I think, in the last 7 years. So the settlements themselves either should never have been there, or they should have been themselves a red line for KCCA to know you are causing. Because I told Parliament, even the trucks that are carrying garbage in Kampala, some tractors, others tippers, so they go dumping garbage at every point. So the whole stretch from Kampala through Mperere to Chitezi is itself a problem. We are just lucky that we have not had a disease, we have not had an outbreak. But that place was already a problem. So the issue that you raise, first, at the moment, government runs Kampala. because the road mayor, even for his own financial benefit, he has had to go to court. They have refused to pay me this. So someone who cannot get himself...
Can you excuse the Lord Mayor? And I know he's watching, but he's not here.
Yeah.
He's been Lord Mayor of Kampala since the authority was created.
Yeah.
He sought re-election, and he said he had come to Kugogola, Echibuga, Kampala.
Yeah.
And this Kugogola has ended up here. And the question is, in your first term, you had a lot of fights with the executive director. In your second term, a bit of fights, but now there's a new executive director. Still, the communication lines are not as clear, or they are not addressing the real issues.
Yeah, because you see, the road mayor, more or less, and his executive, they most work the same way we work in parliament. You have government on one side and the opposition. So there are not many things on which you are going to agree because of the nature of our politics, obviously. But also because when you are an elected leader, you want things done, but you are not in control of the technical arm of the KCCA. The technical arm reports to someone else.
But you've seen those reports from the technical people at KCCA. There's that particular letter that I think from the head of health?
Public health.
Public health,
yeah.
Head of public health.
Yeah.
And he's saying this is a disaster in waiting. They already cracks.
They may have taken it.
And he says, come and visit the site itself. That was a minute.
Even the road mayor was there in January. He
yes.
said this thing is an accident in waiting. But we may not have, because the moment you don't have the technical knowledge, you may not know, the full implication of even that communication. When they say so, people may have generally taken it that it's a normal threat. Because I've told you as early as 2005, 2015, 14, when I was the MP, World Bank had already said, please stop bringing
dumping more.
Yes.
And you continue dumping there.
Yeah. So you can imagine the time I was MP, it is now almost 10 years later, it just hadn't happened. Maybe they were living under the hope that it will not happen.
Were you able to escalate this to your level as a member of parliament to say,
we had protests. We had protest. What KCC did at that time was to do the road. So when we protested, don't bring garbage here. They came and paved the road from Mpererwe to Rusanya. So that acted like a painkiller. So we said, okay, now that they have done the road, we can slow down a bit. So the protests, in fact, I got my chairman of LC and the defense of Chitezi itself as a village. They were arrested because we had a protest saying, please do not bring garbage here anymore.
Was that was for the community? In Parliament, did you have a discussion about it?
I made a presentation using the World Bank report. Many committees of Parliament have visited, from Committee of Natural Resources, Climate Change. All their reports are saying the same thing. But I don't think government was moved because the complaint this week by the Minister for Kampala, captured even in the reports of the Committee on Presidential Affairs who are overseeing KCCA, was that every year we have asked you for money.
You don't give us.
You don't give us. This particular financial year that we have started, we asked for 30 billion. You gave us 3. So what do you want us to do with the 3 when we're asking you for...
James Alemi is watching us and raises quite a number of questions and says he wants KCA top leadership and the Lord Mayor to answer the following questions. When was the dumping site gazetted? How big was it? Did KCCA map out no-go areas? Is there a zone around the dump site that is a no settlement area? Did the affected residents settle on the gazetted area within the
landfill?
The landfill. Yeah. And then he says, any plans by KCCA for recycling the waste into manure and electricity? Why was the memo by the scientists indicating danger ignored by the technical department of KCCA? Does KCCA have an emergency fund for such a disaster? James Alemi and Aden follow of the show. Ofono Pondo, why is no one taking responsibility?
Well, because no one wants to take responsibility. You have had the MP of Kira who has confessed that he once presided over Kitezi.
Former MP of Chadondo East.
former MP. And the most effective thing he did was to protest. But these things appear to be basic, because in our homes we generate garbage. How would we manage garbage in our homes? I think you simply enlarge what you do at home and do it at KCCA level or at a national level. In my view, it is a gross failure of leadership at KCCA by both Mr. Lukwago, the Lord Mayor, who is doing his third term, but of course we all know him, or perhaps some of us know him. He likes avoiding responsibility. And so you don't expect Lukwago to take responsibility in a situation like this one.
But the president said it's ceremonial. He was the one in charge. He said it was ceremonial.
You made your point. I listened to you.
I am giving you information.
Don't
be offended.
I know you don't want to take responsibility like him. He's your buddy. For the technical arm, I want to be honest. I don't think the executive director of KCCA has what it takes to be the executive director of KCCA. I think she shouldn't have been appointed in the first place, in my view. If you look at the cumulative failure in KCCA since she came in, I am told her contract was renewed recently. It baffles me that with the cumulative failure, the decay that KCCA is, her contract was renewed.
You've argued before that the president has different considerations to make who he appoints, who he keeps, who he doesn't keep.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying. It baffles me. Now, the question James Anemi raises, the many of them, are basic, because you ask, Kitezi was, probably they started dumping there maybe 20 years ago or 30 years ago. How big was Kitezi? How big was Kampala then? What was the volume of rubbish? One would expect that a serious urban authority should have been progressively looking at the volume of rubbish and the size of the landfill. And with the resources you have, whether you as internally generated or from the central government or even donor funded, you can go as far as 100 kilometers from Kampala. Could be in Nakasongola, could be in Chivoga, could be in Mukono, could be in Kayunga, and purchase or lease or rent a place. In the meantime, you gazette this one, you cordon off, you fence off. Now, once you fence off, then the question of people who come and encroach on fenced off place, well known. When a tragedy like this happens, nobody...
You have few questions.
Yeah, you have few questions, few people will blame you. So, how come Kitezi landfill has no physical barrier, physical demarcation? So that when a tragedy like this happens, or when people go there, we know you have come here by whose authority. Secondly, if you have physical barrier, then you control access. Now, if you have people who are coming to scavenge for or sort garbage, there should be people who go there by the authority of KCCA. So that when a tragedy like this happens, you can answer for those you are allowed to go there.
Thank you.
And then the question of compensation, blah, 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 all comes. But there's incompetence, negligence, and many things that shouldn't have happened. Yes, we can blame the central government for failure to give adequate resources to the KCCA. But that does not remove the primary responsibility on the basics.
Let's take a break, and when we come back, I'll go to Dr. Bwanika and Honorable Sechikobo on the same issue of Kitezi. We'll be right back.
NBS Frontline.
You're still watching the Frontline on NBS TV. And for those of you watching us, beyond the numbers of the dead, beyond the crisis of where to put that garbage, the discussion we're just having off the air, there are deeper issues that need to be looked into in resolving this issue. One is that the KCCA could decide and say, well, we don't have where to dump this garbage, it's going to stay in your homes. What will that mean? But government at a higher level, Minister of Finance, is it ready to release more money to KCCA and the other urban areas within the Kampala metropolitan area to deal with the garbage crisis? But Dr. Abed Bwanika, preparing for this show, I've been looking through headlines that run in newspapers over the years. KCCA to generate electricity from Chitezi, KCCA government to generate, and they are just that stories. Nothing has ever happened. So the proposals about recycling that garbage have been on, I think, since Chitezi was established. The stories about generating electricity from there, stories about generating manure from there, all sorts of things. But there's a whole different economy that runs there. What went wrong?
I think what has happened in Chitezi provides us with opportunity to rethink as a nation in terms of what is our national waste management strategy. And that should focus not only on Kampala, not only on Wakiso and Entebbe, on a larger urban area space that we have. The issues of waste management, they are not only in Kampala. Kampala is on peak, but government must sit down. I'm surprised that the African mind is only triggered when there is a disaster. We need to rethink, first of all, how do we reduce waste into the urban areas? There is a lot that we bring in this city which would have stayed in the countryside. Someone should come up with a study. When I used to go to the university, those were applicable research areas. I don't know what people do these days at the university. But
there's no deficiency of those studies. There are many.
No,
there are many people have produced.
I'm talking about. I'm talking about what must be left. How do we minimize?
There have been studies, Dr. Bwanika,
yes,
to say, why are you bringing unpeeled matoke into the city? The peelings of matoke are needed more in the villages where the matoke grows than in the city. There was, I remember, discussion about why cow hooves, skin, horns are coming into the city.
Yes, but
the intestines are coming into the city. Pardon?
But that ended.
Yes.
The Muslims in Kampala,
yes,
protested. They said, you want to remove our job.
No, I mean,
halal meat.
To go and slaughter those animals from wherever they are.
No, but they refused. They said they are
we need to take these studies further. First of all, if you want to minimize waste that comes with animals, you need to know where to place the abattoirs. Your abattoir is just here in the city, in the middle of the city. The abattoir should have been beyond Mpigi, in Nakasongola.
In Kimanya Kabonera.
Yeah, Kimanya Kabonera, we are now a city. We should be far so that you don't bring that garbage into the town. We need to think, I mean, these studies are already here, repurposing what I'm hearing, some of you are calling recycling. How do we repurpose these waste into energy, into fertilizers? I know those studies are already here, but government must rethink about the policy. The other day I was in Parliament and I was asking the minister, you capped the energy cost at 5 cents per kilowatt hour. That is not attractive to the investors. If you know that a project, an energy project is going to benefit a nation beyond energy, you are collecting garbage, you are generating fertilizers and other byproducts, then your cap must be maybe 12, 13, because there are other benefits. But you know, those who advise government, the president has been talking about, on the other power generation, 5 is okay. But for garbage, we need to, I heard the Attorney General say that they are signing a project.
So they are put at 10. That's what
10.
he said.
Yeah. That's what he said, at 10, and that is okay. But we should have done that, and that policy should be uniform throughout the country. We need to talk about the recycling. I believe that I'm seeing it around Chitezi, plastics and what. But how do we collect that garbage? That is another thing. We are investing a lot of money. We mix garbage and then people end up in Chitezi, they are collecting. We need to train our people about garbage collection. What do we put where? And these are simple things that a nation should have in place. So I believe that Chitezi, but you know, in Uganda, we talk around a disaster. By the next 2 weeks, this would have died. I mean, it would have died down.
Let me have a comment from you, and then we'll move on to discussing the court ruling.
Colleagues have already given the pros and cons, and I don't think I would go into the blame game, blaming this or that. But what is apparent is that in other countries, garbage and rubbish is a form of protest. Like the North Korea sending rubbish to the south as a form of protest. Here we are having Ugandans, unspecified number, but way above 50, dying of rubbish, dying of garbage in the modern era. I think this is telling. How can citizens of a country in huge numbers die of rubbish? I think we've mismanaged that. Don't look at KCCA or look at government, all of us. There's no way you can blame Lukwago being at the city hall. We all stand to blame. And this is very bad, very sad, and regrettable. Probably for me, I would say, as John Donne put it, every man's death diminishes me, for I'm involved with mankind. So don't look at it as the city led by the opposition or NRM slumbering on the job. Someone ought to take responsibility for this. And that's the bottom line. From whichever angle you may look at it, there was failure. There was failure, and that failure, apparently, the Ugandan way, the Ugandan style, we are just looking on. As pages are turned, that issue is lost to the wind. But I think it's very sad, whether we have revolutionaries or we have those opposing. Really, the total sum is that as Uganda, we are doing badly on that sector.
Thank you very much.
The last one.
Yes.
I was seeing the minister lamenting that even the KCC employees in their vehicles have not been recovered up to now. They were swallowed up by the same rubbish. Even the KCC employees. And I was asking, before we talk about resettlement, can't we work on the rescue? On the rescue. Because this was not a plane crash that no survivor. Some people were caught up in their houses. You must be sure that someone could be lying somewhere in a corner, crying out for hope. And the only answer we got is that we've only covered less than a quarter
of what, yes,
of what it would take us.
I think that's a bigger disaster. How quickly can we respond to disasters themselves?
Yes.
The Prime Minister was talking about still mobilizing graders to try and search more areas. I think scrambling them together. To put together 15 for Chitezi has been a problem. I think they're getting to that number now. Excavators rather. And the bigger question is, many cities are emerging. Government has recognized many cities, including where I come from in Fort Portal, in Soroti, in Mbarara, Kabale, Gulu, and other places. What lessons are being learned today to prevent future disasters? And that talk of, pardon?
Yes, the problem is not being a city. The problem is management, the capacity of the leaders managing these entities.
That's part of the problem, which I think
not the
yes,
city.
that's the bigger problem.
So don't scare us from having cities.
Well, you must have the management capacity before you establish too many cities. Judge Douglas Karekona Singiza, on 12th August 2024, issued his ruling on a petition for judicial review over the decision of the Parliamentary Commission to award backbench commissioners a total of 1.7 billion shillings as a service award. And the biggest debate I've had about the decision of the judge is to give guilty but not guilty verdict. Says legally the decision passed the legal test, or passes the legal test. But morally, he finds a lot of issues and has asked the PSS, the appointing authority to discipline the chief accounting, the accounting office.
Commence disciplinary.
Commence disciplinary. And I've been thinking through and saying, if you have said the action was legal, disciplinary on what basis? The judge cannot take on the moral sanctioning of a public servant from where they sit. But maybe legal experts, more experienced lawyers out there will help us to navigate this. But the bigger question is, you've seen the decision, you've heard about it. Let me start with Honorable Theodore Sechikubo. You're the man leading the efforts to have the 4 backbench commissioners censured for taking this money.
Yes.
Now the court has said, this was a petition to the court by somebody called Bwete, Daniel Bwete, as a private citizen who sought the interpretation of whether this was legal and sought a number of remedies here. You are a lawyer, so tell me, where does this leave you?
First of all, I'm happy being here at a time when I and my colleagues concluded on the signature collection exercise. You see, I was last here when we were starting this process, and I was encountered with OO here. The first thing I would have expected of him would be to eat his humble pie and apologize because of the, you know, the way he attacked our nascent motion, and particularly me, who was heading the censure. And, you know, and he has passed as a political commentator, as a news analyst. And I don't know how OO still maintains that high-profile position with his predictions coming to naught and personal attack. But now, for tonight, when you ask me about what is the situation now, Charles, allow me to start, to give it a background. When we started the censure or collection of signatures, there were a lot of tricks made to defeat this process.
As a lawyer, I would appreciate, Honorable Sechikubo, if we stuck to what this decision means, because many of our viewers out there are not necessarily...
Charles, I'm coming
yes.
to that. But I wanted you to put this into perspective. A matter starting as a contestation between members of parliament, some members of parliament, putting it to their commissioners that you took this money illegally, the 1.7, and they saying, no, you passed that, you don't read, the money was in the budget, you passed it yourself. And that's how it started. But now the final culmination is what I'm coming to, is when all the processes are done, trying to fail the collection of signatures, but members continue signing. And finally, a notice is lodged with the clerk to parliament for onward presentation to the speaker. At that stage, when the motion is lodged, as people are waiting, there are many
we haven't gone into the legal yet, but I'm coming back to you on that. Let me come back to you on that kindly. Indulge me for the moment. let me bring in your colleagues here and ask the same question. But we'll come, I'll give you time to go into the detail. No, I'll come back to you in a moment. Let me just come back to you. I want to stay with Dr. Bedwanika near you there. Dr. Bedwanika, you never appended your signature. You are deeply into the Mpuga camp and have been defending to say you got this money legally. Now the court seems to agree with you, but there is a moral test to it as well.
The court is very clear that that money was part of the appropriation bill, which was presented by the executive and passed by Parliament. That's what we have been telling our colleagues in the Parliament, that that money followed the right procedure of Parliament to appropriate. And they kept on, I don't know whether, I don't believe that Honorable Sechikubo did not have that information. I believe that Honorable Sechikubo's purpose and his friend was completely a different one. Because Honorable Sechikubo has been in Parliament, this is his 5th term. He is very, very acquainted with the procedures and the rules and the law. So the court has only helped us to confirm for us what we knew. But also the court has, in a way, made some members of Parliament naked. They are put in a place which have been airing to the public, that some members of Parliament, sometimes they don't read. They don't read documents. They don't follow through. They go into the plenary and sometimes they just shout and fail to understand what and I'm talking about some members of Parliament. Yes. So I think this. I think.
Just a minute.
Yes. I mean, I'm just talking about this order, because that's what I mean. If a member of Parliament, you are sent to one of our main purpose, our main work as members of Parliament is to appropriate. How do you appropriate, and then the next day you come to the public and begin to tell them that we don't know how a service award was given, we don't know where it came from? That shows that you're a member of Parliament that doesn't want to read, doesn't want to, either some people read and they don't understand. So I want to appreciate the court and that judge that he took time and
Dr. Wanika,
he has helped the people
judge,
of Uganda.
Judge Singiza had significant issues on the morality of that award, and says the clerk to Parliament, for example, should have advised.
I'm not a lawyer, but in my understanding of the law, I have had people make arguments that you have to read the entire judgment, whatever he wrote. But I'm also very interested in his conclusions, which are orders. From the orders, I'm seeing the judge is very clear. Because what is the main background for Honorable Sechikubo's motion? It is about the legality of the service award. And the judge is very clear on that. And I mean, that was the basis. I know that they are now coming up with new areas. But this one is very clear.
You better listen to us. Because we are the movers of the motion.
But they gave you opportunity to speak.
We are the movers of the motion.
Went around.
This is our baby. But the last point, yes. But the last point I wanted him to address. Who went to court? Because this was the matter in the domain of Parliament.
No.
Will you win by tricks?
No, who went to court?
Who went to court?
Any Ugandan
You can't take yourself to court. You prosecute yourself.
Who takes himself to court?
And then you come out and say that, you see, court has decided the matter.
That is very simplistic. I've heard you say that.
You are the lawyer on the show.
First of all, they had an opportunity.
Hold it a moment, Dr. Wanika.
Yes.
You are the lawyer on the show.
Yes.
And we're discussing a decision
Of court.
Of court.
Yes.
So,
of the High Court.
However this matter ended up in court, at this stage, doesn't matter. What is important is that a citizen decided, went to court
yes.
over the same matter you're
Which
seeking.
citizen?
Of Uganda.
Bwete.
A citizen of Uganda.
Bwete Daniel went to court.
Look at the camera, Bwanika. Which
a
citizen?
Of Uganda.
Okay, now
So,
let me address the legalese now.
Yes.
Yes.
Let's address what this decision legally means for your petition.
Exactly.
Our petition, if you ask me about the legality of our petition in view of the ruling, our petition is still standing. For those who conceived that novel idea of going to court, they looked at the original motion, but they did not address themselves to the motion as lodged to the Speaker through the clerk to Parliament. They went with the old notion that we are talking about service award. But on top of the service award, there are other areas. For instance, if you look at paragraph 7 of our motion, you could see it. We went beyond the service award. We looked at the unconscionable spending of money, the stealing of money, the awarding of money, taking of money through fictitious trips, giving money, taking spouses, etc. in that motion. We moved away from there. There are other areas, and ours was misconduct. Misconduct was broad. We broadened it to involve other aspects of misbehavior under misconduct. And that's how, even if you were to take off the aspect of the service award, which I think also would be erroneous, the motion was not on one leg. It had several, 2 or 3 legs on which it could stand. You could sever the areas you think were covered by court, but the motion by itself is still alive and clear, and it is unimpeachable. Number 2, coming to the ruling, the basic, why we wouldn't discuss it the other time, was because they are trying to raise the issue of sub judice, that once a matter is before court, and for you to start debating it would be to tamper with it, to influence the judge into deciding it wrongly. So the question of sub judice arises whereby a matter before court cannot be debated. But I'm happy that this time now, that case has been resolved. A ruling has been issued, and Parliament is at liberty now to debate the same.
You have a procedure that you follow under your rules of procedure, and step number 1 was to raise the 177 signatures, which you succeeded at doing.
Yes.
Step number 2 was to notify the clerk to Parliament that you have raised the required number of signatures. You and I had this discussion on the other Sean Face-Off, yes, and even on the Frontline here. Step number 3 is for the clerk to submit your petition to the Speaker. Now, the Speaker is supposed to respond to you. Are you looking at the possibility that the Speaker is going to write back to you and say, this matter has been resolved in court, therefore we have no basis to proceed with it?
You see, to the chagrin of Dr. Bed, total chagrin, you can read it on his face. We did what we were supposed to do.
Yes.
Because this motion, if you look at Rule 110, is self-executing. It gives time lines. The moment you've gotten your required number of signatures, you submit.
Then the clock ticks in.
Yes. There you know that within 24 hours, the clerk must transmit the same to the Speaker.
Yes.
And indeed, we have evidence from the clerk that he did that.
What is the Speaker supposed to do?
He did.
And for the benefit of our viewers, Honorable Semoju, the people who sit in Parliament can help us. What are the next steps supposed to be?
Now, to me, the Speaker may not necessarily have to write to me. What the Speaker does is to issue a notice to all members of Parliament, because it's no longer a searchable motion. It's no longer a motion of the petitioners. Now it is the property of Parliament.
My question is the process.
Yes.
Honorable Semuju, you and Honorable Sechikubo have been in Parliament for a bit of time. What happens? Because people have been following this debate, asking questions. We had this process, we have this development. What happens next? Is that motion still tenable?
You see, I have worked with the Honorable Sechikubo before, correcting signatures. That time, to recall Parliament, when the Honorable Nevanda died. We actually got the signatures. And Honorable Sechikubo knows we are moving even at night. Parliament is not court. Parliament actually works by tricks. You remember one time we nearly got knocked.
I'm sorry, could you help our viewers understand what the process is?
I am coming to that. Honorable Sechikubo knows that one time we were nearly knocked at night with Chwanda by Namayanja. As we were moving, they were also moving. We got the signatures, submitted to Honorable Kadaga. Kadaga said she got some 3-5 MPs to withdraw. And she said, now your matter has collapsed. We told her, but you see, when MPs attempted to withdraw signatures during the censure of Mwezi, Wapakabulu said, you are adults with heads, you cannot withdraw signatures. But she said, okay, it has collapsed. And that's how Parliament works. That's how politics works. I am surprised that Sechikubo thinks that the tricks are... have I lied? You can correct me if I did lie.
What it was then, Honorable, if you remember, indeed part of our group...
Gentlemen...
Indeed part of our group, some...
I am coming to answer, but I want to receive information.
I'm trying to make this show
please,
as meaningful to the viewer as possible.
I am coming to that. The point, I started with the motion before, similar but the content different, that actually the requirements under the rules we got, submitted, but politics now started. And the motion was collapsed on technicalities. So the Honorable Sechikubo has, and I have praised him before for keeping this matter alive. What follows now is not in his hands. What follows is that the Speaker will respond. That power, unfortunately, lies with the Speaker. The Speaker may say we proceed with the debate. The Speaker may say we may find technicalities like it was before. And then the matter is closed.
She now has a ruling of the court.
Let me tell you, that Parliament can be frustrating. We even rolled on tables during Tojukwatako because the rules were not followed. Honorable Sechikubo were arrested together. So Sechikubo has been a fighter. I commend him. But the rules are interpreted by the Speaker. They are not interpreted. So what you're asking has been answered by Sechikubo.
Yes.
Correction of signature, submission to the clerk submit to the Speaker puts the matter on the order paper. That's how the process runs. The Speaker puts the matter on the order paper, you debate. When you debate, essentially like this particular one, it requires half of Parliament to support it, and then the commissioners will be removed. So those are the processes that are supposed to follow, that now, like the case was before, are not in our hands. Actually,
you vote for...
Yes, because you are counting.
You vote one against them one by one. Yes. How many buys?
There is an order.
There is no requirement that you vote one by one.
I think the rules of procedure require that you vote on them one by one.
No.
I think from what I have read, I'm trying to stay away from giving my own reading of the rules of procedure of Parliament.
No way.
Ofono Pondo.
Yes. But you are not allowed. You've asked me about the process.
Yes,
let me make my comment on this matter.
And I'm trying to tie
yeah.
your rules of procedure
yes.
and how the decision of court impacts those rules of procedure. I mean, impacts them. How does it come into play?
So first you need to understand that Parliament, Sechikubo can correct me, I'm not sure that is the Constitution, but Parliament is not allowed to make a decision to change or alter a decision of court.
Is that Article 120
of the Constitution?
3, yeah.
But all these matters of Parliament, as I said, they are matters that are interpreted by the presiding officer. That's why even when you go to the matter of prejudice, the presiding officer, I remember one time I wrote an article about second, he had to call me during the enactment of the referendum laws. Remember that crisis? When the Honorable Daniel Maratubo told him that this matter you are dealing with is in court, second said, I am not aware. Then the following day, they brought another bill, and MPs wanted to proceed with it. He said, this matter is before a court. So the one who said, I am not aware, the following day he said, this matter is before a court. And if you want, Constitutional Court is not very far from here. You can walk there. So the drama of Parliament,
you're quoting
from my knowledge as a parliamentarian and as a journalist there, I don't know whether it is by Commonwealth. They seem to have given presiding officers too much power. It doesn't matter even if the whole Parliament signs the presiding officer. That's why we have voted yes, and the presiding officer says no, and we.
For the benefit of our viewers, and Mayor Fabrice and Ofonopondo will take a quick commercial break, and then I'll come back to you. But for the benefit of our viewers, there is a process lined out in the parliamentary rules of procedure about the censure motion. And that's what we're trying to interrogate, because when you put two arms of government, the judiciary and the legislature, side by side, you need to get to where this process goes. And for land colleague Theodore Sechikubo, how do you salvage your motion in light of these developments? Is what I've been trying to get out of you. How do you salvage it? Because it looks like this decision significantly puts a significant barrier toward its progression, because the presiding office of Parliament has legroom now to write back to you and say, there is a decision of court. There is no need to further the debate. But let's pick this up after a very short commercial break. We'll be right back.
Frontline.
Is Honorable Theodore Sechikubo's petition to censure 4 backbench commissioners, how much more life is left in it? It has to deal with the legality, the legal issues. It has to deal with the political issues of it, because politics about the trickery that he talked about has to deal with the politics of it. And the judge, Justice Singiza, spent a lot of time on what you lawyers call obiter dictum. He dealt with the law, and then went to deal with his own opinion that is not binding. It is on the basis of that opinion that he expounded on what he thinks should be done, the recommendation on the presiding officer. And I'm wondering how that actually proceeds, because if the accounting office of Parliament, the clerk, who is a lawyer, says, but the judge said, I acted, this was legal. So on what basis do you discipline me? How do you discipline the accounting officer? I think those are the issues I'm finding in this. It's a fairly short ruling, 23 pages. It's fairly short. But someone is watching us. I mean, many people have sent messages, but someone has sent a message here that I would like to read out for the benefit of both the panelists here and the viewers. This is in a decision, Rights Network Uganda versus Attorney General. And it says, Article 92 of the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda, 1995, prohibits the passage of legislation to alter the decision or judgment of any court. It prohibits retrospective legislation. The motion is now a moot exercise. Honorable Sechikubo, I understand what moot means legally. But let me bring in... Mark, thank you very much for sharing this. I appreciate you contributing to this debate, and I would encourage our viewers, especially lawyers, to help us navigate through this. Where does this motion stand at the moment, and what does it mean? There's the broader fight against corruption that's being dealt with separately, but in terms of this particular motion. Yes.
Honorable Sechikubo takes issue that I tried to dim light on his gathering signatures. I want to congratulate myself that through part of my efforts, it has taken Honorable Sechikubo 3 months to get the signatures. 3 months, something which you could have done in 1 week or 2 weeks.
Would it surprise you?
Now, you made your statement, you made your comments when I kept quiet. I listened to you, Honorable Sechikubo.
Would it surprise you?
Please,
I wish you the greatest luck, assuming the Speaker allows the motion to come to the floor, that you can actually obtain 50% of all members of Parliament to vote the 4 commissioners out. I wish you the greatest of luck. I highly doubt that Honorable Sechikubo you will obtain. First, not all the 186 that have signed for you will agree with you on all the 4 commissioners during the debate and the actual vote. Secondly, Honorable Sechikubo himself has said here that what was judged upon was varied to what he has filed to the clerk, meaning that it is possible that during debate, some members are going to say, no, you misled me. I signed on something else, you have varied the petition, the contents of the petition. And he has given 2 elements of the petition he has given to the clerk. He has said that apart from the service award, he has gone into the financial abuses in Parliament. Among them, where people were taking fictitious trips. Fictitious trips in Parliament, if they are there, they must have been authorized by the clerk, by the Speaker. Clearly, therefore, Sechikubo's petition has probably the unintended consequence of pointing the gun on the Speaker and the Deputy Speaker who make a decision on how trips are made in Parliament.
Hold it, you'll have time to respond.
2, he has said that there are people who have been taking their wives, spouses, and perhaps children and other associates on parliamentary money on trips abroad. Even in that one, I think nobody has authority to assign parliamentary money resources except the Speaker and the clerk. To that extent, therefore, the question of the politics in Parliament will come in. Would the supporters of the Speaker, for example, would these MPs who have benefited from these alleged fictitious trips side with Sechikubo or will fight back? And that's why I'm saying I wish him the greatest of luck if he succeeds. Knowing, and you say, you don't have to be in, Honorable Manyam Shega used to tell us that I don't have to be in Bethlehem. To know that Jesus was born there in Bethlehem. I don't have to be in Parliament to know the dynamics in Parliament. I've lived in that Parliament probably longer than all the people here. Not as a member of Parliament, but as another person. I was a journalist there. I've been an operative. I'm still an operative there. Yes. You have a formal job. You're not an operative. Yes. So Honorable Sechikubo and others, we probably have, some of us probably have more levers in how Parliament conducts certain businesses than actual members of Parliament who sit there, in terms of analysis and giving them, building for them different scenarios. If Sechikubo's petition, Honorable Sechikubo's petition, has the intended consequence eventually of, for example, destabilizing NRM politics in Parliament and outside of it, I don't see how we, the NRM thinkers, will allow Honorable Sechikubo to have his way. And so, yes, but it could be NRM over a different strand, because the NRM also has strands, depending on the issues, and that's why the things you're talking about, the tricks, which is legitimate in democratic politics, will come into play. I don't think the dynamics in NUP and the dynamics in the general opposition If, for example, Honorable Matthias Mpuga, as I seem to read, he enjoys more support among the opposition. If they think that this motion has the intended consequence of embarrassing him, just embarrassing him, for instance, as it appears to be, I don't think the majority of the opposition will vote with you when it comes to the active vote.
Mr. Fonopondo, are you alive to the fact Honorable Sechikubo needed only 177 signatures?
No.
He surpassed that number by 11.
That's true. That's what I'm saying. Causing debate. Causing debate. But now, he himself has told you here, when you asked him, what's the fate of your motion, he said, now this petition is not mine. It is for members of parliament. Meaning it is actually kind of out of his hand. And by the rules of procedure, it is going to be in the hands of the presiding officer. He's the one not going to determine how the presiding officer interprets the ruling of court, the judgment of court. It is not him. The presiding officer is going to ask her technical team, the lawyers in parliament, is going to ask the legal committee probably, or the people she trusts, probably inside parliament or outside, and then will give Honorable Sechikubo a ruling how his petition,
yes,
the fate of his petition. Now, you can then disagree with him, with the presiding officer, how they have ruled. They can say, this matter it has been overtaken by the court ruling, and therefore it collapses. Now, it will remain for Sechikubo to come and complain, grumble. For lack of better, you the Baganda, the one who say, Bamusera Mukatari, Akayana Kubo.
I'm not a grumbler.
When they cheat you at the butcher or at the market, you can go complaining along the road. The speaker can as well tell you your petition has collapsed because of the ruling.
Let me get a comment from Mayor Fabrice.
I don't know about the rules of procedure in the House. You can try you can challenge her. I'm sure you can challenge her using the rules, but that will be put to a vote, to a debate.
Yes.
I doubt if in the balance of forces, Honorable Sechikubo, you can defeat the 4 commissioners and the ruling of the speaker.
Yes. Mayor, you're watching these developments that have been happening.
Yes.
I'm actually interested.
I'm a realist.
Yes, one is the law. How do you move to the next stage in light of these developments? Number 2 is the politics that these gentlemen here are more familiar with. I mean, they've been at the game for quite some time. They know what happens. So, how do you advise such people to proceed?
Well, Charles, I think Honorable Semuju mentioned something important here. And let me speak for the lay person out there. This is purely now become a political thing. The law has pronounced itself that legally there was nothing wrong. What was there is a morality issue. But from what I've picked from my senior colleagues here who are in Parliament, there are 3 things that I am observing. Honorable Sechikubo, I want to commend you for wanting to fight corruption. But I think, one, like Honorable Semuju said, the politics or the trickery has beaten him. He says they went to court themselves, the people, because he claims the people themselves went and sued themselves. Yes. They got a judgment that says there was nothing illegal done. What is the law that governs, what is the procedure of Parliament? It says that if the court has pronounced itself, that matter is dropped. Now, I picked something that I hope that I misunderstood Honorable Sechikubo when he said what the MPs signed was a draft and not, because I would think you cannot make me sign a draft and that becomes a motion afterwards. So, because you can't collect my signature, then go and change. What he's doing is actually walking into the same trap because the people, if honestly they choose because of interest. I've seen this is a game of interest. I saw, well, on TV what we were seeing was MPs being sort of put on the spot to sign.
Yes.
So many of them who were signing were scared of what their voters back home or the people on social media are going to say, because they're saying, you did not sign. And I saw some of the tweets where they're saying, you make sure that we see those who did not sign. Now, here's what I'm saying. If the law is very clear that they cannot alter a judgment unless Honorable Sechikubo is going to do a new motion, this particular one, I would think, like, I think it was the person who wrote was Emmanuel, who wrote to you.
No, the one who quoted Article 98,
yes.
Mark Kamanzi.
Mark Kamanzi. What Mark talks about is very true. This becomes a moot where we're going to see MPs discuss something that legally they cannot go and change. So my opinion, or I think what most of us would be interested in knowing, is Honorable Sechikubo bringing a new motion, which would require him to collect new signatures, because he says that what was signed was a draft, but what is submitted has many other things that did not include this particular thing that was judged on. And honestly, I am hoping that I misunderstood what he said, or because Honorable Sechikubo, this is recorded, and the people watching you tomorrow may use that as an excuse to withdraw their signatures. Honorable Semuju talked about them saying 5 people withdrew their signatures, which would be a reason for that one who signed under duress or under fear that voters are seeing him not sign. He will say, but you said this was amended. So I did not sign to what you put. What I signed for was just what court ruled against.
We continue with this discussion on Afromobile, but yes, I'll give you an opportunity. Mark came back and said, it's a cardinal principle of law that court
NBS Frontline.